questions to answer.
Yeah. And like phrases to kind of entice people and hooks, especially with your social media. Like you're on top of that.
But from what I've seen of your stuff, it's all smooth though. You do a good job of it. So.
I try to, and it's gotten better over time where, you find your kind of ticks and things that you look for and that you can cut those out, and you're more, it took me a while to think about me filming while I was filming and kind of have that dual mindset. It's like, okay, I'm explaining it, I'm talking, I'm showing it at the same time, saying, don't say, don't say, all that kind of stuff all at the same time. And it's like mental gymnastics trying
100%.
and all it does is save you time on the back end. And cause I'll film a 60-second TikTok, takes me 20 minutes to film and then 40 minutes to edit it, get captions and get effects and all that stuff on there. And so trying to be efficient with it's been the biggest thing for me, at least recently, trying to get between shipping our products and making bread and everything like that. It's just like my time is super important now because I don't have a ton of extra of it. Yeah. So the least amount of time I can take filming, editing, it's like, I'm trying to squeeze a spot in my bakery where I can, so up a light permanently so I don't have to take half an hour every single time to dig it all out and get it out and everything now. So,
so backing up real quick so everybody can know. This is the Film Garage 208 podcast. I'm Sarah. This is Daniel.
Hello.
And this is Parker.
Parker.
So we are talking about Eat Basil and Bloom.
Yep.
And that is you are like a sourdough bread
king.
baker,
influencer.
king,
Yeah.
Influencer.
I've gotten the Mr. Clean of sourdough.
That's funny.
I used to do like a white shirt all the time and my bald head.
That's so funny.
But yeah, I've been baking sourdough for over 10 years now.
10 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Just personally. And then we launched our pizza trailer in 2022, doing sourdough pizza.
Okay.
And we closed that this year just because bread has taken off. And
oh, wow. Really?
And so we started posting on social media last winter, because the trailer closed during the winter, because just the way it operates.
Winter?
Yeah. So 2023.
Okay.
Yeah. And so during the winter, the trailer wasn't running. So we're like, hey, let's try and drive we started selling like dehydrated sourdough starter online, which kind of every home baker does nowadays.
Yeah.
And to try and drive those sales,
that went big.
Started posting them on TikTok, Instagram, everything to try and get people to buy it. And it kind of just blew up as far as like teaching.
Just in 2022? 2023?
So
my goodness.
I didn't post on TikTok until October of last year. Yeah, so it's just been barely over a year.
Good for you.
So you had been growing the business as just the bakery pizza trailer.
It was just a pizza
TikTok.
trailer, yeah.
Pizza.
So we ran the pizza trailer for 2 seasons before we started posting.
Gotcha.
Like we posted on Instagram, but mostly like this is our schedule for the week.
Like local kind of stuff.
And things. And then posting more for content reasons on TikTok, because TikTok was more flexible than Instagram. It kind of let me, on TikTok, you kind of like throw whatever you want at the wall.
Okay.
And there's not really too many negatives. Instagram, if you're not like looking pretty and everything like that, you can lose followers and things. So TikTok
they can embrace that on TikTok.
They embrace kind of the
realness.
The realness,
raw.
exactly. And so started doing that. And it just kind of snowballed from there. We're about to hit 130,000 followers on TikTok. We're coming up on 50 on Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah. And so it's been
that's exciting.
So that's great. So now pivoting with bread. And so now that you can sell these starters online, so now you're basically able to do worldwide things. Like you're not just Idaho Falls. That's what you needed.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
My sourdough starter has shipped to hundreds of countries across the world. Yeah. And it's like, we would have never been able to do that without the social media side
so
of
this
things.
Social media is what like kicked it off.
Exactly.
Wow.
What sparked that?
The social media. It was, like I said, it was just trying to get revenue during a time when our pizza trailer was closed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sure,
So
you're like, let's just do this.
I'm going to get on here. Like, I bake sourdough pizza. I make good pizza. Here's my sourdough, buy it and things. But it quickly transitioned from, okay, we're not going to be pushing this product anymore. We're going to teach people online, grow the community, build that trust. And then we found with that, the sales came afterwards.
That's really awesome.
Exciting.
Yeah. It was a transitional kind of period where
that was pretty quick.
Yeah.
For the educational piece to start getting like the trust.
Yeah. And that's the other thing with TikTok too, is like, I think, especially the last year, people have really grown into wanting to learn on the platform. especially compared to, Instagram's all about aesthetics and, your counter and your kitchen looking perfect, but I can go in my dirty bakery, not dirty, but like I've been mixing bread all day. So there's flour everywhere and say like, oh, this is how I manage my sourdough starter. It's different in this way. These are the benefits. And people like get it. Like and so they're like, oh yeah, he's actually baking 150 loaves of bread. He should know he probably knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. The social proof is there, obviously.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So backing up 10 years, I guess, from now, like what got you into baking?
Yeah. What's your background?
Yeah. So I always loved cooking, like not at varying levels. Like, I bought my first cookbook like my sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
It was, I'm Only Here for the Food by Alton Brown. If you guys have ever seen like Good Eats, anything, that's like my favorite TV show of all time.
He was a high school baking cook kid.
I can go off.
This was,
Alton Brown is a man.
Oh, yeah, but we're going to go see him in March. He's going to be in Boise. Yep. And so
smart. Like learned everything I know about cooking from him. Like
absolutely.
He's like the Bill Nye of food.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I just really latched onto that. It was one of my
I've never heard anyone else bring him up.
He talks about him all the time.
It was my favorite show up until it ended, and
I think we just became best friends.
I know, right?
He talks about this all the time. It's so weird.
That's awesome. Yeah. Alton Brown's been a huge inspiration for me. And so I cooked, followed some cookbooks in high school, but then when I left home, I had to learn how to cook for myself. I lived in Italy for a couple of years and I learned a lot of the language from cookbooks.
What brought you to Italy?
I served a mission there. Yeah. So for
what a cool place.
So kind of like 20s.
Yeah. So I was like 18, 19.
Okay.
And
that worked out great for a kid with a food love for food.
Yeah.
That
and so
really
I studied, I studied music before I went on to Italy, opera. I used to sing opera.
Oh my gosh. Talented.
Transitioned from that to something more realistic. I came home, wanted to learn about nutrition and be like a dietitian and such.
Interesting.
And then realized that, I was more...
Wait, after coming back from Italy?
After coming back,
that is what made you be like, I want to be now a dietitian.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, like as I learned how to cook and it's like why I was there in the community of, missionaries and such, they were like, oh, Parker cook, he like cooks so good. Like, oh, I want to like stay in the department with him because he can cook so good. But I just was reading books to learn the language and it helped that way, and reading cookbooks to learn the language.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so when I came home, I went to school, I minored in the culinary arts because it's what I really enjoyed. Studied exercise physiology because I had kind of got in my head I needed something more realistic, wanted to do like nursing, kind of go towards like nurse and anesthesiology. But
did you have someone in your life telling you to take these like more logical decisions, or was that just
it was just kind of me getting in my head about it? And
like it's kind of like you too for a second also.
A little bit, yeah.
And so as I got to the end of my college career, I was focusing a ton on the food science aspect of cooking and getting deep down into like why things work the way they work. Because that was kind of blowing up like the modernist cuisine movement and really digging into the science of why cooking works and different ways you can manipulate it. And where I was going to school, they didn't have a food science program. So I was kind of self-taught, but I got hired as a research and development chef out of school for Eagle Eye Produce in Idaho Falls.
Okay.
And so I worked with potatoes for 5 years and making them more convenient to eat. We did microwave products. And so I did a lot of R&D and heavy and stuff like that. And then I left that position to work full-time on my wife's business, Golden Dot Lane.
Okay.
Which we're coming into our 10th year
of
that. So we're, as far as like entrepreneurship, we've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah, you've been hustling.
Yeah. And so I left that position in 2019 so I could take things off of her plate so she could take that to the next level.
Still pretty recent, 2019.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, like I said, that's coming into its 10th year.
What was her business?
It's called Golden Dot Lane. And she sells hair accessories. I say she because she started it, but I still do that with everything else that we're doing. But hair accessories for young girls, babies, headbands. We've been, one of the number one accessory sellers in the United States for the last 5+ years. And so that's, still pumping along. And yeah, it's been awesome.
That's crazy.
It's a big stat to boast. Wow.
I know, right?
Cool.
And so, but
who would have thought like here, like in
it's crazy.
Idaho
There's
Falls,
so many entrepreneurs in Idaho Falls. We've done like a lot of not meet and greets, like networking stuff. And just, it's crazy to see the amount of creativity just in this little southeastern Idaho pocket,
Surprising.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, in 2022, or so when we moved into our house, we lived in Utah, moved into our house. I wanted to build a pizza oven. And I quickly realized that financially and like my building skills, it was out of the question.
Like a real pizza oven.
Like a big pizza oven, like out of bricks and everything, wood fire and all that stuff. But
that's cool.
I wasn't capable of building that. But that was right when these portable pizza ovens started coming out.
Perfect timing before you wasted all of
convenient.
that time. And you're like, oh my gosh, I could have bought a $50.
Instead of spending $18,000 and building it myself. And so it's probably going to be all janky. I just bought this little $400 pizza oven that you could get up to 900 degrees and cook a pizza in 90 seconds. Got one for Father's Day, and it kind of fell in from there. I started doing regular pizza dough, transitioned into sourdough. From that went sourdough bread, just personally. And then we would do pizza parties every summer all the time. And people were like, you should sell this. You should sell this. You should sell this.
Okay.
And we invested and built the trailer. And so we launched that April of 2022. First day we were open, I made 250 pizzas.
Damn.
Where were you at? Where did you open up first day?
So we were in Rigby, just at one of the parks.
How long of a time span was that?
So we started, we started getting the trailer built out of a company in Nampa, Food Concept, Idaho. That's like all they do. In November of 2021. Oh, wow. And it was finished in February. And then I got used to the trailer, transitioned all my product, everything I was learning to that process and getting it all kitted out and everything. And we launched that April.
It's quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I had the product. It was just getting it, in the kitchen of the trailer and getting the flow and everything going. And,
sure.
But yeah, April, end of April, once it got warm enough, we launched and had built up enough of a following by then that, I sold 250 pizzas the first day. That was the most pizzas we ever sold in one day, was our first.
So did you just be like, on social media, I'm going to be like at this park?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Really?
And people started following us for that and seeing where we were. And so that's kind of what it snowballed into everything.
Before that day, had you worked in like a restaurant or anything like?
Not just my culinary school stuff.
So how was that first rush of a day?
It was insane. Like I was making pizzas for 7 straight hours. Just making, cause I made every single pizza. Eventually our last season, my nephew who ran the front, if we were having a busy day, he could come in and shape a pizza and get it topped, but I took it all to the ovens and cooked every single one. And by the time we closed this last year, we just hit over, 10,000 pizzas served.
My goodness.
Wow.
I made every single dough ball. I cooked every single pizza. And so, it's been a wild ride. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, you've perfected it. You've put in your 10,000 hours.
Exactly.
Damn.
So you're trying to sell that business now?
Yep. So this last year we got invited to the farmer's market after they saw me talking about bread on social media. And so we did that.
Cool.
And it blew up where, the first few weeks of the market, I was selling maybe 40 loaves.
How was that going to the farmer's market every Saturday?
It was great. It's been such an awesome opportunity for us. By the time we were finished with the summer market, I was selling, I could only make 150 loaves of bread for every Saturday, and we were selling out. Nice. Started with like 40, but the week would go, Tuesday I would prep for pizza. Wednesday we had a market where we did the pizza trailer. Thursday, Friday I would be doing bread, sell the bread on Saturday. And by the end of the summer I was dead.
Mm-hmm. And restart the next week.
Yeah.
Restart the next week. And then, Sunday, Monday, get ingredients and start over. And when I'm the only one making everything, prepping everything, cooking everything and cleaning everything, that's
burnout central.
And so with the social media kind of blowing up and lots of people wanting to, do like one-on-one consultations and kinds of things.
Great.
And the bread just being, the bread's still labor intensive, but it's different because like in the trailer, when I've got 2,000 degree pizza ovens in my face and people ordering and I'm making it, I love that aspect of it, but it's draining. And it's like sourdough bread. It's 2 18-hour days to make, for me to make 150 loaves of bread. And then I get to go sit at the market, sell it, talk with people, and it's much more relaxed.
Your days look different.
Yes. So it's still a lot of work, but it's less physically taxing.
Yeah.
So, but we made the decision, bittersweet, to close the trailer this year and won't be opening it again. And so it's just all bread from here on out, which has disappointed a lot of people. I'm a little disappointed in it because I love pizza, but it's just, you can't do everything.
And around here, it's when someone does something really good, it's like
dang.
And so it's like, and it's like, maybe, sometime in the future, maybe I can do a pop-up with a restaurant or something, but it's not on the cards.
Because you were doing
just do it for the
catering.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We had a ton of catering this last year. We would have a day where I would mix all my bread on Thursday. I would have to stop baking halfway through Friday to go cater a wedding with the pizza, be baking until 2 or 3 in the morning, get back to the bakery at 6 to load all the bread up. After the wedding or after the market was over and I got back at like 3:30, go to another wedding at 6 with a trailer, most of the times out in like Titonia.
Literally.
And so it was just, I couldn't move Sunday. Like it's just laying in bed, just stiff. My hands didn't want to work.
So I guess pivoting off of that, how do we do some work-life balance? Have we figured that out yet?
Real quick before we go on to that, what does the business model now look like that you're selling more online?
Yeah. So the business model now is obviously
like your day-to-day, I guess.
Like my day-to-day is, we're constantly posting to social media and because from the get-go with TikTok, I got my first kind of viral hit on challenging some certain status quos with kind of the sourdough community. You see these influencers who have gallon-sized jars of sourdough starter. And my first kind of viral hit was like, you don't need that much. You can keep a small amount. I bake, at the time I wasn't doing bread. I was like, I make 300 pizzas every week and I only keep this much starter. Here's how I go from this much to enough to make 300 pizzas. And that kind of was my big first hit. Okay. And because people hadn't realized that at the time.
Totally. Because there's a big sourdough starter community.
It's huge.
On there.
Yeah. And it's just kind of crazy how you can bring a new idea and how receptive people are to it. There's obviously people who are like, that doesn't make any sense. A couple
trolls.
There's always trolls, but you get used to it. But so now we pivoted to, we're always posting on social media, we're responding to questions, whatever that is. It's kind of like the number one thing that I wake up thinking. I was like, what are we going to post today? Because unfortunately I have a hard time planning ahead. And it's like, okay, let's get a schedule of what I'm going to post when. Every once in a while, we'll get into a groove for like a week, but then it just kind of,
it can be hard.
Right. And I do a lot of my best work kind of in the moment too. It's like, I'll come into an idea. This is how I'm going to do it, but then switch it up like in the moment. And so it's hard to, if I write it down and have a plan, I tend to like, okay, this is how we have to do it. So if I don't have that plan, I'm more flexible. But then also it's kind of when I can't come up with an idea, it's like, I'm there for an hour, just like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. That's the worst.
But then it's always pushing the products on our storefront, and also we're selling on Etsy as well because we can do international more simple on Etsy. But it's right now it's both building it up because we're in a point where we're selling, like I mixed enough starter before I came here for 350 orders that are shipping out today.
Nice.
And so now it's just scaling at the moment. So we've built the community, we've built the trust that people will come to and see. We get, tons of 5-star reviews on the product. Cause my backgrounds aren't research and development. So I'm constantly figuring out, what can I tweak to make it better? It's the best it's ever been. And so as far as the product sales, that's kind of what our day-to-day is on, because that's a continuous form of revenue. With the bakery, the market's moved from every week to once a month during the winter. And so it's like, okay, what can I do in the meantime to improve the product? I'm hypercritical of everything that I bake. And so it's like, I'm always tweaking things like this, reduce this amount of flour, put some more whole grain into this. Maybe I bring some more water into it.
It's a whole science.
Yeah. It is a science. And it's just like my background of I'm never satisfied with it. And then I'll look at a loaf and objectively it looks perfect, but I'm like, there's
We're
this
always
thing.
our harshest critic.
Yeah. And so, but also I think that's what takes my product to the next level as well, is because I think I'm making some of the best quality bread that you can get. And I can also look at it on the other side of things and say, this isn't up to snuff. I need to improve. So like, I don't bring a new flavor or a new formula of bread to the market or anything until it's ready. And I think that's a difference between me and some other people. Is I think a lot of people in the kind of micro bakery community, they bake 10 loaves of bread. Their family tells them that it's great. And then they start selling it. And it's like, and I'm not going to, and that's not me being critical of like people sell.
Like
if someone's going to buy it, sell it,
yeah.
you know, and I'm not going to say don't sell your bread, but I think what sets me apart is I try to make it the best that it can be. And I can, and I know what the best is and how I can emulate that and get it to where I want it to go.
Sure. And your customers can expect that quality from you.
Exactly.
So that's just what you're making known.
Talking about like building that customer base and fostering those customers is having a solid product. Like I mentioned, we started selling out 40 loaves of bread a week to 150 because word got out that like, oh, this is something different.
Incrementally as the weeks went on for the farmers market.
It was like 3 weeks. We went from we tripled our volume. Yeah, because it just kind of exploded. And I look back.
And what's your price point on the loaves too?
The price point. So like our original loaf, kind of our basic sourdough, white sourdough bread is $11.99.
Okay.
But they're big. So it's like as big as my head. So it's a big loaf that's going to last your family all week. And, the most expensive one that I do is a cheddar jalapeno loaf. And that's $13.99 just for the cost of ingredients.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot more, and it's a lot more technically, what I'm trying to say, technically advanced to get it to where I want it to be. Get a nice open loaf that still has like the cheese and everything in there, so it's not flat.
That's like real bread is so much more filling. Like a loaf of that size, that's real bread. Like you're making is like like a loaf of bread from the store. You can like squish the whole bag if you wanted to.
Yeah, and so
pretty sure Alton Brown does that on a
exactly.
He does. He squishes it.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, it's making a quality product that people want to come back and get, and that was the biggest thing for me. Was at the end of the farmers market, I want to say like 65-70% of our sales were repeat customers coming back to get their bread for the week.
Yeah.
And when we did the holidays, when we had the holidays, this we're doing like local pickups out of my bakery in Rigby.
Okay.
And when I say the farmers market, I mean the Idaho Falls farmers market. That's the biggest one.
When did you get the bakery?
So we moved in, I want to say May of this year.
Literally this summer.
So where were you doing all this before?
So we operate under cottage law. So I was doing it out of my home oven.
Okay.
And so the first 200 loaves that I sold,
oh my gosh,
I was
that's
doing
so
it out
hard.
of my home
It's just
oven.
like constantly baking.
Yeah, it was a 10, 11 hour process just to do,
I bet,
50 loaves of bread.
And just like a normal home oven.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had like a big rack that I'd put all the loaves on, and then we'd package them. We were up till like 2-3 in the morning, finishing baking, getting it all packaged to go to the market at 7 the next day.
Yeah.
But then so our warehouse for Golden Dot Lane is just on Main Street in Rigby, and it's a 3-suite building.
Okay.
And the people who were in the suite next to us wanted to downsize, so they left. And we told our landlord, hey, we just ordered a bread oven so I could cook like 15 loaves at a time in this, like an actual oven. And we were just like, hey, we need a space for this. Can we squeeze in there? And so Basil and Bloom is next door to Golden Dot Lane.
Okay.
How convenient.
And there was like a kitchen.
Oh, we built the kitchen into it.
You built the kitchen.
Yeah, so we put the kitchen in there. But then I also started teaching in-person sourdough classes last year.
Okay.
Because you have all that
doing
space
once a week. And so the whole front end of the building is, I have a TV, a big whiteboard so that I can set up tables and get 20, 25 people in there to learn about sourdough starter.
Yeah. That's really cool that you were able to build your own like kitchen.
Yeah. And it's nice too, because it didn't exist before. So it has a great workflow, and my experience from the trailer I brought that into it. I'm like, this is where I want this, and this. So it's a nice flow. It's pretty small, but I'm only one person in there working. It's all the space I need right now. And so, yeah. Do
you think you're going to have to grow? Do you think you're going to have to hire some people to help you?
At this point, we're kind of we'll see how the market goes this next year. And so I hit my limit at the end of the market, and just for me doing it by myself. And so physically, mentally, we're kind of where we're at, but we need to see where social media goes and the online side of things goes this upcoming year, and how to balance that with the physical baking bread. Cause it's labor intensive. It's time demanding. It's physically demanding. And so if I need to bring someone in to take over that or assist with that, we'll see.
At least seasonal, you know, here and there.
Exactly. And so right now it's like, okay, right now we can handle it. I can handle it and do it. And so, but right now we'll get there, I think eventually, but whether or not it expands into like a full blown bakery in the future, I don't know if we'll get to that point, but
I wonder if it got big enough, would you be able to like get your recipe to like a manufacturer that could do all this for you? And
I don't know, if I could control it.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. We've had one of our biggest viral hits this year was I would go to the farmer's market and push and say like, oh, I brought 140 loaves of bread to the market. How long is it going to take me to sell? And, every 15 seconds in the video, it's like, okay, I've sold 10 of this, 5 of this, 5 of this. This one's not moving as much. Am I going to sell out? And got millions of views over the summer doing that, and people became invested in it. And so as long as I could, if we needed to expand, we could, but it's just not part of our goals for this year. Right now, we're focusing a lot more on building a sustainable kind of online community and figuring out ways to monetize that, because like I'm putting a lot of money and time into TikTok and Instagram, and we're looking into YouTube now, and so we want to get a more sustainable, more stable income from social media. And so we're exploring ways to take with our community into a way and make it so that I can focus on that more full time, because it's less physically demanding than the bread. And so I think the bread, we definitely want to do the farmer's market again, but whether that expands to, I think I remember what I was going to get at from the farmer's market videos. People with millions of views on people seeing me sell out of my bread. And so people are asking, oh, do you ship it? And so that's kind of one thing that we wanted to look at now is people all across the country are like, your bread looks delicious. How can I buy it? And so that's kind of one thing. I think the next expansion for the bakery is fresh. Yeah. And so we wanted to wait until the holidays were over because USPS is a mess during the holidays.
Yes.
Bless their hearts. You know, they do the best they can.
Oh my goodness.
But, you know, we've been shipping with them for 10 years, but yeah, and so that's kind of the next bread venture is seeing if we can ship it and have it maintain the quality standard that I want. But then as far as expanding, you know, we'll see what happens this next year.
That's exciting to have so much online opportunity.
Yeah, because people do really ship baked goods all over the country. Like there's websites like Goldbelly and that do it, but you know, shipping can be prohibitively expensive. Yeah. And so it's kind of finding that sweet spot as to,
or like hurt the product or change the product.
That's the number one thing for me is like, I want someone to open the package and have it be like Basil and Bloom quality. I don't want it to be like squished or, you know, be rubbery or for some reason.
That was when we lived in Hawaii because it's like so far away. A lot of the places don't actually have like chains there because they just don't trust getting it there physically.
And that's something with our sourdough starter. Cause this year, one of our bigger challenges as far as innovating, cause I've always been kind of at the forefront of bringing new ideas to like TikTok and Instagram and stuff, but also product wise, I'm constantly thinking about how I can get a more simple product to the customer as far as the sourdough starter is concerned. And so I developed a new kind of a rapid version of the dehydrated starter. You know, the regular starter that everybody kind of sells, it's like a 4 or 5 day process from start to finish.
I've tried it once.
Yeah. And so I came up with one that's ready in like 36 hours. And so you just mix it once. You don't have to like discard anything. But the big thing this year, the challenge was I wanted to ship fresh sourdough starter directly to the customer.
Already pre-made.
No dehydrating on my part.
Ready to go.
And then they can bake literally the next day. But the problem with sourdough starter, it's a living thing. And the longer it goes without getting new water or flour, the weaker it becomes. And so a 4 to 5 day transit at, you know, ambient temperatures can cause issues.
You can't trust how long this is going to be.
Right. All it would take is a couple day delay and it's ruined.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was convinced like, I can't make this work. But my wife, who, you know, I wouldn't be here without, she's very much the visionary. I'm in the weeds figuring out day-to-day problems. She's like, this is where we're going to get to. This is where we're gonna go. She's like, we're going to ship fresh starter. You'll figure it out. And so, but it was like, I'm going to have to dedicate a ton of time to this. And she's like, okay, I'll watch the kids for 8 hours. You go to the bakery and go hammer it out. And so we did it. And we've been shipping the fresh starter for, I want to say 4 or 5 months now, and it's our number one product.
No way.
Yeah.
What was it that you had to do?
It's just kind of tweaking the starter itself, because most people, when you have a sourdough starter, it's very liquidy.
Yeah.
And it would like spill out of the jars and everything, and like in transit and stuff like that. And it just moved so fast, especially during the summer when it's warm. And so just tweaking the starter a little bit and getting into alternative ways to keep a sourdough starter really kind of was what spearheaded.
That's really cool.
And so, but yeah, I mixed, I want to say 5 kilograms of sourdough starter before I came here. That's all going to get portioned out today. While they're going to be starting here in the next.
Is it in like minutes. Little jars that you?
Yeah, we just do little jars, and we've invested in some like packaging machinery so that we can like put a plastic band around it, so it's more official and everything. It's not like I'm doing it, you know, just out of my kitchen or something. Like we do it out of the bakery, but
saran wrapped around it.
Exactly. And so
every jar gets handed to you to tighten.
Exactly. Yeah, well, that's the thing is we before the holidays and this kind of comes back to, this is like a huge team effort too. It's not like I talk about myself and the content and everything, but like without my wife constantly coming up, she's the main driver for like ideas for TikToks and that kind of thing. You know, I'm always filming and coming up with how to make those work. She's like, okay, well, I saw someone do this. Let's spin it this way for sourdough. She's constantly feeding me that. Yeah. She's coming up with the big ideas for the products and things. But then at the same time, it's like we have a good team of shippers who right now they're portioning out those 5 kilograms of sourdough starter, putting them in the jars and shipping them.
Great.
Today.
So you do have some help.
Yeah. So we got some help on that front, and we've learned, that's a lot of lessons we learned from Golden Dot Lane over the last 10 years is, you know, having a good team that
when to let go and
the product
let other people do some things.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's one thing that was with the trailer was really hard to do. It's like the pizza is so technical as far as how you stretch it, how you top it. And when you put it into a 1,000-degree oven, you have 60 seconds to cook it. You make one mistake, it's burnt and it's not sellable.
All of that's ruined.
I could train someone how to do that, but just didn't have the time to. And so,
the risk you would have to pay if they mess up too many, it's just not worth it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's months of training. And it's just I didn't have the time to do it. Yeah. So
I mean, like in any kitchen, like you're like a sous chef for years before you get to move on. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
So just got to put in your time. But Sarah was asking earlier before I interrupted. Wow, way back.
Oh, wait, actually, we need to restart the camera. We're already at like halfway. Okay, yeah. So I guess kind of what I was saying was the just work-life balance.
Yeah, so that's kind of our goal for this year is actively making a more balanced thing. Because it's like, I mean, as an entrepreneur, we've been entrepreneurs for 10 years. It's so one of my sourdough students. Yes, we have 2 kids.
How
old? 10 and he's almost 2.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, a young guy.
Yeah. So one of my sourdough students, we were talking about owning a business. So this was in an in-person class a few weeks ago, had a really great analogy. She's like, owning your own business is like having a backpack that's constantly full of rocks that are things to do. Sometimes it's boulders, sometimes it's pebbles, but it's always full. And it's just kind of finding that being an entrepreneur, it's freeing. Like, you don't answer to anybody, but that's also what kind of binds you as well, is there's always something to do, and finding that balance of, okay, I need to read a book with my time tonight, like a novel instead of a cookbook, to try and be researching new things and forcing myself to do that, or scheduling time to respond to comments on TikTok and Instagram instead of spending every second of free time that I have responding to comments. And so that's going into 2025. That's kind of one of the big goals, is
like time blocking a little
bit. And it's like, I've always been passionate about playing video games and things. It's a hobby of mine ever since I was a kid. Okay. But
which one?
I'm a PlayStation guy.
Oh, PlayStation. Yeah. Okay.
And so, but I've had my PlayStation 5 since it came out, and I've barely touched it just because
so busy.
Priorities.
Literally.
Obviously priorities. I'm not going to spend 10 hours a day playing a game, but half an hour every once in a while. I need to, this year, I want to make time for that. I used to be a voracious reader, and I got a Kindle for Christmas. And so I'm dedicating the time to turning off the sourdough, the influencer, the business, and just, reading a story.
I completely get that. That is so hard.
And that's the hard part too, is like you have to schedule it. Like you can't just, it's like, it's not, you come home,
if you don't force yourself,
clock out.
You won't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you come home, you don't clock out as an entrepreneur. You come home and it's like, okay, well, I've got customer service I have to respond to. I've got these replacements I got to get shipped out. It's like, okay, well, no, I need to sit down half an hour. I'm reading, and,
yeah. No, I have a hard time with that when it's like, I take a second and I'm like, let me do this like little fun thing that I would want to do that won't benefit me like for work. And then the whole time I'm just so guilty.
I was just thinking about that too. It's like there's a guilt that comes to it.
I can't do it.
Yeah. I was like, I could wake up in the morning and play a game for an hour before everybody gets up or something. But then you think about that and it's like, well, I could be doing something more worthwhile.
Sure.
But what is my mental health worthwhile?
Exactly.
And so you kind of have to reframe it and make it okay to turn off.
I completely agree. It's so important.
And that's something I've always struggled with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because if it's your own business, it's that effort you put in is like what you're going to get out of it. Exactly. You know that. And
And the thing too is like my wife and I really balance each other really well in that we're both very of the mindset, and I think you have to be as an entrepreneur, of willing to do whatever the work requires of you. And so it's like when the market really picked up this year, for 4 days, I'm 18-hour days making bread, baking bread. And so she comes in and makes sure like inventory is fine. We've got the bread bags, we've got the labels. The kids are taken care of because I'm literally like nonstop. My mixing days are insane because, mixing 150 loaves of bread and making sure the timing's right, the starter's good, and everything.
I can't even believe.
It's a marathon.
Yeah.
And so when I had to focus full time on that, because that was, a great revenue source for us, especially as the online stuff was really picking up over the summer and our online presence was picking up. She picked up the slack, and it's the same thing on my end where when, Golden Dot Lane's like going crazy, cause we really have like really high peaks around holidays and Christmas and stuff. She's managing a lot of that and the shippers and everything and the inventory. And so I come in and I can pick up where she needs me.
So I guess it's good to have some ebbs and flows in the business so that each can kind of have their peak.
Exactly.
It's good as long as you know their ebbs and flows. The first year, it's terrifying because you're like, what is this? This up and down, But then, after a couple of years, you're like, all right, this is normal. Like, don't panic. Just we'll get through it.
We can persevere.
Yeah, and we just balance each other really well creatively, and just we were both very much of the mindset, this has to get done. Who's going to do it? And we'll both raise our hand. We'll do it. Like,
that's nice because a lot of people even ask us a lot, like, how do you guys work together all the time? How do you work so close and not like drive each other crazy?
I know, right?
And it sounds like you and your wife are the same way, where it's just like being very just like honest about what needs to get done and how it's going to get done. And like, like, I don't know, just
my wife is
both have the same goals, I guess,
at just being kind of straightforward and like, this has to get done. We can't put it off anymore. Who's going to get it done? I'm like, okay, I'll get it done. But then it's like at the same time with your relationship, like if you get in a fight, there's still work to be done. Like, and so literally, you learn the skills and you learn, being with each other, how to reciprocate and give what you need to, so that you can resolve your stuff. And so, because your business is going to move on,
100%
needs to move on.
Yeah.
And so you need to resolve your stuff.
Yeah. There's no choice. It's like, we have to figure this out.
The face of the business. Put a smile on right now.
No, but that's really cool that you have someone that can back you like that.
Yeah.
You get so much more confidence to do these things that when you have ideas.
Well, life is more fun when you have like your partner doing things out all the time. Like life is just fun.
It's extremely fulfilling. Like being able to say, we built this, and with like Basil and Bloom wouldn't be what it is without both of us. Like, yes, I'm in the videos and I'm coming up with the products, I'm baking the bread, but like I couldn't handle that without the pressure, without my partner being there. And I when I'm burnt out and it's been a long day and I just don't want to turn my brain off, and she comes in, she's like, hey, I've got this idea, let's do it. And we get it done. And she pushes me farther than I would let myself go. Yeah,
for sure.
It's like how people say like relationships aren't 50-50. They're like 90-10 some days, and
exactly.
they go different ways. And it's like, it's the same for your business, and you have to like know that.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Totally. Okay. Let me see.
How did you come up? How did you come up with the name?
The name. So it was hard.
Because I love the name.
It was hard.
So classy.
And so when we first started, we wanted to when we first started thinking of names for Basil and Bloom, we wanted to try and incorporate it and tie it into like Golden Dot Lane somehow. And so we're like, oh, can we do golden something? And then like, I'm not nearly as good as I used to be. Like I speak Italian, so I was trying to figure out different ways to incorporate like an Italian name into like a pizzeria. Yeah. And nothing really flowed. So it's just like nothing really came to fruition. And so, but there were a lot of really great pizzerias that were getting a lot of recognition that were just one word. Like a big inspiration for me is Razza Pizzeria in Jersey City. Okay. And you get this like, I felt the shorter the better. So I was thinking of one word names, and I came up with Bloom because it has to do with yeast and sourdough. Bloom Pizzeria. And my wife, being as wise as she was like, I want to do like, let's try and get 2 words, but both B words. And so something Bloom and something. And I was just kind of flipping through one of my cookbooks, and I closed the book, and on the back was a huge basil leaf. And I was just like, what about Basil and Bloom? And she was like, I think I like that. So she sent it to a bunch of her friends who, some of them working like in marketing and everything. And they're like, that's awesome. Yeah. And so then it's just kind of how it came to be. Like it wasn't like,
it's subtly
inspiring.
Italian.
Yeah. Exactly.
But pizza.
And it wasn't like, like, oh, I woke up in the middle of the night inspired. It took work, and it was like probably 4 or 5 weeks of like, what are we going to call this thing? Because the trailer was like getting built and it was ready, and we needed to build social media.
Pizza's been done a million times, and there's a million different business. Like, how do you stand out? That's it's a unique name.
Yeah. And so, and with like the trailer was getting built, we needed to, file trademarks and get the LLCs and everything set up. So like we need a name. And so we had to sit down, and it's almost, when you're forced to do something, like the inspiration can't come, but also you can also hammer it out. And that's essentially what we did. And it's like a lot of back and forth. Like, I really like this. And then she was like, I don't like this. And then the same way, like, she's like, oh, I really like this. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not convinced. And being sensitive to each other's feelings and everything. But we came up something collaborated, something that we both enjoyed. And we get a lot of questions, like, especially at the farmer's market, like, oh, where's the bread that has the basil in it? And it's like, oh, we started as a pizza trailer, and now we're doing sourdough bread. We wanted to continue the thing, but
not every name is literal, guys.
I know. And so it's like, I've got my menu here. Like there's no basil bread, but
that's really funny.
And so, but no, it's been good, and it flows, and it's been a really kind of inspired choice for us that took work to get to.
You could start selling fresh basil on a plant. Just like have that on the table.
Oh, there you go.
Just to satisfy that person.
Yeah, just to satisfy the random people.
I did that for a minute. I had like a little tomato can from the pizza sauce, and had like a basil plant in there, and you like rub it a little bit, and it smells, but it was too much. I'm very much a function over fashion kind of baker and cook. So it's like, this is too much. I'm wasting time. Let's figure out how to make this basil look pretty.
So for like, where do you draw inspiration from? Like types of bread.
So, inspiration, like I'm constantly following people in the space, like bakers, cooks. I bought more cookbooks this year than I did like the last like 3 years combined. And I'm always reading, I'm always researching as far as like the physical bread product.
Was it bread cookbooks?
Yeah, mostly sourdough focused.
Okay.
And not on, obviously my niche is sourdough, but I do a lot of other baking as well, like with instant yeast and such. So, you know, I bought a lot of cookbooks that were just baking in general, because you can apply that kind of stuff to what you're doing. But, you know, we talked about Out and Brown earlier. Is the last like 6 months I've really focused on, for the content, on bringing more of my personality to it, not just me in front of a whiteboard I'm teaching. Being more creative with it. And people started saying things like, this is giving Good Eats vibes and I'm here for it. Or like this is reminding me of Out and Brown. And I wasn't actively.
We literally talked about this for you.
No, we've had a whole conversation.
I was like, he needs to do Alton Brown. Like, there's no Alton Brown in the field right now.
Of like bread analysis and like going in. Yeah,
exactly. And so do it. More recently, I found out where all Good Eats is streaming, because I haven't really watched Good Eats for like the last like 3 or 4 years. And so now when I have some downtime, I'm like, okay, where's HBO Max is where it's at right now. But or I guess it's Max, which is terrible. But so now when I have like time to do some R&D, I'll watch an episode of Good Eats. I'm like, okay, I liked how he did this shot here. Maybe I can figure out a way to do that. And so one of my big videos that took off is, you know, I have my sourdough. People like to name their sourdough starters. Okay, they get an attachment to it. And mine's Lord Sauron, which is the bad guy from Lord of the Rings. Okay. And like, I've got the One Ring on for my wedding band, but love that. I bought some Little People figures. Okay. And they had all the villains from Lord of the Rings, and they had a little Lord Sauron figure. Okay. So I keep it with my starter now and use him in videos. He'll like be in the background somewhere, but I opened my bread oven because it has a little steam vent, like a little eye hole, and had my camera in. So I opened it and I was like, hey, you did something bad. You're in sourdough jail. Brought him out and was like, oh, what are you doing? And so, but that was like, oh, this is just like Good Eats. And so now I'm going back to that kind of well that I obviously was influenced by, because without knowing it, people were connecting the dots. And so now I'm actively going back and doing that. But I try to find,
I'm here for it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And if a lot of people follow like big sourdough accounts and everything, but I'm following bakeries, I'm following bakers, I'm following consultants who travel around the world and improving bakeries and stuff. And who get all of their information from like scholarly articles and things like that. And so like the biggest kind of challenge that I've put out there the last month or two is keeping your sourdough starter at room temperature constantly. A lot of people will keep it in the fridge and then take it out and make what they need to and then put it back in the fridge. But studies are showing now that that's detrimental to your starter, that your starter will be better just kept at room temperature, which takes more work. You have to like maintain it every single day instead of every 2 weeks.
That's how mine did not survive, because I was the only one maintaining.
There you go. But that's been pushing a lot of people's buttons. It's like, this is unnecessary. Like you don't need to do this. But then I'm getting more comments that like, my bread is the best it's ever been, but the science on it is kind of sparse and far and in between. There's a couple creators who have put in the work that I'm learning from. Oh. And they're like, and so one guy, he just travels around the world consulting bakeries, and he's like, you can go find it yourself. I'll point you in the direction. Here's Google Scholar, search this and go find it. But you know, he shares certain tidbits here and there, and I'll grab it and I'm like, okay, let's test it. Let's incorporate it and do it. Cause like, honestly, right now I don't have the time to go search on PubMed and Google Scholar to go dig through these scientific articles. I want to, that's my next kind of phase of learning. There's only so many cookbooks out there. Yeah. And cookbooks, the thing with a cookbook too, is everyone's like, when are you coming out with a cookbook? When you do it right, it's like a 3-year process. And so a brand new cookbook that comes out today
is cookbooks need pictures, and that means a picture for every single thing.
And it's like recipe testing. Like I'm in a recipe testing group for a baker I follow, who he's been working on it for 2 years, and he sends out the recipes and everybody tests it, and he's like, gets his feedback, changes the recipe, hears it again, and it's months long for one part of the book. Yeah. And you can tell when people rush it. And so, but like Richard Hart, he's if you guys heard of Tartine Bread out of San Francisco, one of the big kind of sourdough, they launched kind of the sourdough movement pre-COVID.
That was in a show the other day, I think.
They're huge. They're all over the world. And so he was head baker there for a while. He just came out with his first cookbook, and it came out around September, or it was November. It was around voting day. But he was like, I've been working on this for 3 years. Here's everything I do differently now that's not in the cookbook, because you started at a certain point. And so when you get a cookbook, it's kind of already dated.
Right.
And so trying to be at the forefront and trying to innovate, I have to look for different sources of inspiration. And so I'm following people's Instagram. Substack's been blowing up for bakers all over the place.
Substack?
It's like a subscription service, but for like written articles instead. Oh. And so a lot of bakers are moving there. But you find little nuggets here and there. And so like the room temperature starters, this baker was talking about it and the benefits of it. And I was like, hey, I'm grabbing onto that. I'm not just throwing it out into my community. I'm testing it. Yeah. I found the benefits and then present it to my community that way. Yeah. So finding inspiration in obviously like the most easily accessible places like cookbooks and Instagram and everything, but also being innovative in where I find my information just to be at the forefront because
right, you need to do like a bread tour or something. A tour like all of Europe and just go meet with like bakers all
like
over.
A dream,
that's summer vacation. Exactly. It's going to be a
but then it's like
European tour.
But for on the opposite side of things, I had my first Saturday off like 2 weeks ago. Thank you. And so it's like, okay, when's that going to happen? You know? But
yeah, right. If only.
But yeah, being inspiration comes from anywhere, and find myself actively trying to find it and what I can do. Cause that's been one of the struggles with social media and product development is being at the forefront and bringing ideas that people haven't heard of before. Yeah. And then being able to teach that as well in a minute and a half. Mm-hmm. And, but then the other struggle too is like people copying you and doing that at the same time. But then
literally your whole script, I'm sure. Some of them.
Well, it's, it's like I've been talking about tiny starters for a year and then you see an account with 3 million followers who's never baked a loaf of bread. That's so like, here's annoying. How you keep a tiny starter. And, but it's a mindset change too. But it's like, if I wasn't doing anything, if what I was doing wasn't important or challenging or new, people wouldn't be copying it. Mm-hmm, and so it's like,
it's trying to teach how to
imitation
do it.
Is a sincerest form of flattery.
Exactly. So. And so it's like, if you're at the forefront and you're innovating, people are going to copy you. Yeah. But because if you're not innovating,
no matter what, they're going to.
If you're not innovating, if you're not doing something different, people won't think it's important and won't do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's a mindset change. And so when accounts started copying us and everything, and it's like, and then at the same time, none of these ideas are initially mine either. Like I pull it from different places. You also
did that from somewhere else.
But I took it, made it my own, and then repackage it and teach it. And so when someone copies me, they're just doing the same thing. And so it's a mindset change of like not being, it's easy to get offended with the social media space, but like you said, you got to change your mindset. It's flattery and it's people being inspired by you. Yeah. And if you weren't doing it right, they wouldn't be following
They
you.
must think you're doing something so right that they got to hop on that too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so the other big thing the last few months is, I talked about sourdough starters are usually a runny, liquidy mixture. I keep a stiffer starter with less water. It looks like a ball. It's not like goopy or anything.
So weird.
People have been asking me about it for months because they see it in the videos like, why does your starter look like that? But it's pretty technical on the side of on things. And kind of going back to being flexible too is a TikToker with a smaller following, like less than 10,000 followers, just was like, hey, I'm really happy I've started kind of following this stiffer starter by Basil and Bloom. Check it out. And her video blew up.
Okay.
Started getting hundreds of thousands of views. Or like I hadn't posted that day, but we had gotten like 1,000 new followers. And I was like, what is happening? Let's trace it down. And we're like, okay, here's this person who shared something that I was doing. They kind of gleaned from my little bits and nuggets like I do from my creators that I follow. And we were in the middle of shipping 100 sourdough starters, and my wife, being as smart as she always is, was like, you need to stop and you need to go film a tutorial on how to do it. And I never wanted to because it's literally because it's like this snowball is going and it's only going to go for so long. Yeah. And so I stopped and I was like, okay, how am I going to explain this in a minute and a half? And realized I couldn't. So I was like, okay, this is going to be a series, but like, here's how you get started. Yeah. Filmed it over the next hour, posted it, and it caught wind of that momentum and blew up. And now I am doing a series on stiff sourdough starters, which I was hesitant to do because
thanks, girly.
It's probably the most technical thing I've talked about on social media. And like I said, I'm not the first one to do it. Other people talk about it on TikTok all the time, but people trust my opinion and my methods. And so I am figuring out the best way to do it. And so it's a lot of math. It's a lot of, you have to know a lot of foundational stuff for baking to really make it work for you the way that it does.
It's a whole nother world.
And so it's going to be like a 15-20 video long series. And so
on TikTok?
On TikTok. Yeah. And so we do it on Instagram as well.
They better not ban TikTok. You better be able to finish that series. This is like a historical thing.
You're kind of changing like a whole market.
Yeah. And it's just kind of like, it comes back to like challenging kind of that status quo. It's like people have been doing things for a long time and they're comfortable with it. And it's like, and my shtick with sourdough baking is I'm never going to tell you a right or wrong way to do something. I've done the testing and I feel like this works best for my product. Try it. If you like it, great. If you don't, I'm not going to tell you to change.
Yeah, like, this is my way, not the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like,
sourdough specifically compared to just like a generic white bread, I guess, is the reason for doing sourdough because you can keep that starter going, or is it the flavor?
So yeah, it's the benefits that you get from the starter. And so like when you make just a loaf of sandwich bread with instant yeast, it's ready to bake in 45 minutes because that yeast is just like a bonfire. It just blows the bread up. It's ready to bake, but you lack a lot of flavor development from that loaf. And so when you have a sourdough starter culture, it's wild yeast, it's more flavorful, but it takes a lot longer to get to where it's going. And during that process, the bacteria and the yeast and the starter work together to create the lift that you want from a fluffy loaf of bread, but also the flavor profile.
Yeah.
And so manipulating your starter in different ways can give you more acidity in your bread. So if you want it to be sour, or it can give you different types of acidity. So there's kind of like, it's kind of the difference between like a lemon or like yogurt. There's different types of acidity there.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And the way you manipulate your starter, you can control how that comes. And so
more outcomes with just that one product versus white bread with quick rise yeast is just always the same.
It's always the same. And like you can mess with that a little bit. Like you can use less yeast, put it in the fridge overnight.
Product wise, when you mix these things, like flour is the same though per recipe, like generally. So it's
and so use the base ingredients, but it's that leavening agent that kind of differentiates the product.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so using a stiffer starter, it favors kind of the yeast side of that yeast bacteria balance. And so you can get bigger, loftier loaves with less work. But on the opposite hand, you have to change your recipe in ways because there's less water. There's more of that flour that gets fermented from the sourdough starter.
It seems easier to mess up because of the flavor situation.
It's very technical. Like there's important aspects to every step of the sourdough process to get a good outcome. And I had a big video. So there was a trending kind of a method, as you call it, called the unloaf that went popular over the summer, where you don't follow any of the sourdough rules and you just kind of mix your dough. You don't do like the stretching, the folding, all the process. You get as minimally technical as you can.
Okay.
The bad boys of sourdough.
Yeah, if you want to call them that. But the loaf that comes out, people were happy with it.
Yeah.
But I looked at it and I'm like, that's not what
just
I'm
because you can doesn't mean you should.
Well, yeah, but then at the same time, I made a video on it that was like, okay, well, how can I use this as an example? And it was a lesson that I learned, that I taught my daughter with schoolwork. It's like, you can either choose the outcome that you want or choose the steps to get an outcome, but you can't have both. So it's like, if you want to do your homework, so it's like, if you want to get an A, you have to do your homework. Yeah. That's not negotiable. If you don't want to do your homework, you don't get to decide what your grade is. That's the outcome of that choice. So it's like, you can do this unloaf and not follow any of the rules, but you don't get to decide how your bread comes out. But I was like, there's no rules.
You're like, but
you might as well just make the white bread a loaf. Like,
But at the same time, it's like, if you're happy with that, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. Yeah. But, and I said, there's no rules with sourdough, but there are techniques.
If you're fine with a B or a D, that's fine.
If you watch the video,
just want it to come out of the pan.
If you watch the video, I actually catch myself and I'm like, both those loaves are valid, like the unloaf and the super technical loaf. So maybe the grading system wasn't the best example, but because they're both bread. And if you're happy with it, I'm not going to tell you not to be happy with it, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
And if you don't want it, then, and I said, there's no rules, but there are techniques to get you a result that you want. So you can either do the techniques to control your result, or you can choose no technique at all, and your result is what it is.
Yeah.
If you were on the Great British Baking Show and you put your loaf up against that loaf, which one are they going to choose?
Oh man.
Yeah. Do you watch that show?
We did for a while.
The holiday baking ones. I love those ones.
And I'm good at baking bread, pastries, anything. I can't.
Well, half the things they're making on there, I don't even know what they are.
I know, right? I'm like, what is this?
I'm like, I can make a really great loaf of just plain sourdough bread and stuff, but when you get into croissants, you get into pies, everything. I'm so like, technical. Okay, I can't.
So much detail.
I can do it, but it's not my
but could be
expertise.
Something like if you found someone who's like a pastry expert.
Absolutely.
Or you just go to school, go back to school for a little.
But yeah, I can make a pie crust, but it's not what I'm passionate about.
So bread is what really that's what you really want to keep.
Yeah, and like people ask, like, the panettone is this Italian pastry that's really popular during Christmas. It's kind of people call it like the Mount Everest of like sourdough baking.
Because it comes in that box at the grocery store.
And it's the way you prepare it is extremely technical.
Yeah,
it's extremely technical to make it. But I have no desire to go down that route. I'm like, I just barely got my bread to where I want it to be like this year.
And like from a business point of view, like why add in another random product?
Exactly.
But it sounds funny, on the Great British Baking Show, they had them make the panettone as a challenge, and all of them were like, why would I ever make this? You can just go buy it in the box. They were like, I've never made this in my life. It was just funny. So just
don't talk about that in the panettone group. So they'll rake you over the coals.
It wasn't me. It was the episode of Great British Baking Show. Okay.
Yes. Deflect it to the.
Okay. So you've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. Do you have advice for someone who's wanting to pursue their passion?
This is what me and my wife talked about most last night, is what advice we would give. And literally, whether it's with a business or social media or anything, it's just start. Like that's it. And that starting point could be different for everybody, whether it's writing down your idea, your business plan, whether it's buying like your first inventory or posting your first TikTok, like just get started. Like people are like, no man, you've grown on social media. Like what advice? And I'm like, have you posted the last week?
Just do it.
And that's the first hurdle. It's like, you have to be vulnerable. You have to, especially like on social media. Like my biggest struggle, I wanted to post on TikTok for a year before we did. Cause I was like, oh, these people, they're posting all this sourdough stuff. And I was like, they're doing great, but I'm like, I could make it more applicable by just saying this, or I could do this. But then that imposter syndrome, like everybody struggles with that. I'm not unique, but like, even to this day, like I'm like, do I know this well enough to be talking about it? Or when I first started posting, I was just like, I don't feel like I understand this well enough. Like my bread doesn't look good enough for me to be someone talking about it with authority. And it wasn't until my sister, she was like, hey, can you teach me about sourdough a little bit? Like I want to learn how to do it. Can you do it? And I was like, oh, I do know about this, like to a degree that, and so we posted, my first TikTok was me making a BLT out of a sourdough loaf that I made. Okay. And I look back on it now and I'm like, oh, that's a rough loaf of bread. I was like, man, I shouldn't have posted that. But you just have to get over that hurdle and just do it. And it's like, and you have to commit to it too. Like haven't missed a day on social media, especially TikTok. Instagram's a little more lenient that way, but.
So you post every day?
Every day. Yeah. I've posted 3 to 5. We don't do multiple as much the last like 3 or 4 months with TikTok, but average 3 to 5 TikToks a day. Wow. And whether I'm sick, whether I just baked and mixed for 18 hours, we're posting something every single day. And you just have to get into it and you just have to do it. And then like the first few months was hard because, I had even friends or just people are like, oh, Parker's an influencer now. Like, oh, you're so cool. You're literally an influencer. And looking back, we're approaching 200,000 followers across platforms.
You're like, I'm the cool guy now.
Yeah, it's like, I'm an influencer, And, we've had multiple videos get 20 million plus views.
That's cool.
It's kind of goes back to like shipping the starter across the world.
It's exciting.
There are people all over the world who are invested this summer. And me selling out my bread from that series that I did is like, oh, am I going to sell out today? Had people online. They're like, this is my favorite thing that I'm watching this summer.
That's great.
Had people coming to the market. They were like, how many have you sold?
That's so cute.
What number am I? And stuff. But you don't get there without starting. And it's like, it's, like coming back to Lord of the Rings, it's like Samwise, like getting to the edge of the Shire. He's like, this is the farthest I've ever gone. And you have to, something needs to push you to get there. And so, it's just getting started and then just being consistent. And so, but, that imposter syndrome, like I said, it's real. It happens to everybody. And even like I said, today, I'm baking the best bread I have ever made. Customers say it's the best bread that they've ever eaten. And every time I post on social media or put out a loaf of bread, I'm like, is this good enough? Do I really know what I'm talking about? And it's like the one thing that's been interesting for me and like validating, and this isn't like me talking myself up, is we've been doing more TikTok lives.
Okay.
And
TikTok live.
Yeah. So just going live and people just flood with questions about sourdough. And that's so great. In like a half-hour period, I'm answering, like 30 plus questions. And
that's great that you have people flooding and asking you questions. People hop on live and it's crickets.
And it's like, I go and I'm like answering question after question after question after question after question. And then at the end, I'm like, okay, maybe I do know what I'm talking about. Cause like I can just kind of get into this situation where I'm not planning and I can just pull from stuff and be able to tell people. But then at the same time, I'm also not afraid to say, I don't know.
Sure.
And it's like, I haven't, that's not my
But there's nothing wrong with also being like, I don't know.
And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up too, is trying to answer stuff when they don't have the experience.
It's like they think that just because they don't know that one answer, they're just now not credible. It's like, no, being honest actually is being credible with you about this.
Yeah.
And so, and it's like, I have no problem asking for help too, like lighting and everything. I'm not a filmmaker. And so when someone's like, the lighting's off on this, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to go. I'm like, sorry.
Probably is.
I was like, I got like a little DJI camera and I'm like, okay, I need to learn what white balance is. I need to learn what exposure is so I can make it look better. And so, and being vulnerable and being like, hey, can you help me with this? Cause I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah.
No, well, I think it's cool. And like, it's I'm sure that like last 10 years of experience and everything you've done is like really satisfying to have that knowledge now just like come out. Like when you didn't think you had it in you and then it came out, it was probably like,
it's exactly what it is. When someone asks a question and I can just answer it. It's like, I try to be like, I'm like, ooh, I'm the humblest person in the room, you know, whatever, that kind of shtick. But you know, I'm very much like, I don't know everything. I know what I know and I know it well, but you know, it is validating and, you know, being able to draw on that experience and be able to help somebody and being able to realize, you know, I did that, you know, and it sounds vain if you phrase it the wrong way, but it's satisfying that like I've put in a lot of work. I put in a lot of work, a lot of time studying and learning this and being able to,
you earned it.
You earned it and being able to help someone is it's fun, you know?
Yeah. That's really cool.
So
that's really cool. So where can people go and follow you?
So we are Eat Basil and Bloom everywhere. So our website's Eat Basil and Bloom, Instagram, TikTok. I've posted a few shorts to YouTube. There's not much going on there at the moment, but we're planning on getting more there, but mostly TikTok and Instagram. Yeah. And so, but on Instagrams, mostly we do a lot of local stuff is always posted on Instagram when we do bread drops and that type of stuff. We're going to be doing that more to TikTok. So we're getting more locals following us on TikTok, but TikTok's mostly global. Like, which is crazy, but global audience.
Right. It's crazy.
But yeah, so Eat Basil and Bloom everywhere. And so, but we do weekly bread drops out of my bakery in Rigby when we don't have the farmer's market in Idaho Falls. The next one in Idaho Falls is the 18th, I believe. It's at the Shiloh Inn.
January 18th.
January 18th. Yeah. January 18th at the convention center adjacent to the Shiloh Inn from 10 to 3. I'll have bread available for those who want to buy it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, I'll be stopping by.
I know, right?
For sure.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No, thank
today.
you. I feel like I rambled a lot, but
no, we learned so much. I feel like I need to
I feel like we have just scratched the surface.
Yeah, we need to talk and have like a class.
If you want to have
social media classes.
I could talk hours about just sourdough.
Well, I'm thinking classes on like social media and TikTok best practices and like stuff like that. You never know. We all have it's
constantly changing and you have to be malleable. You have to be flexible because, you know, they tweak the algorithm something and they don't tell them it's all, and nobody knows what they're doing. I feel people are making their best educated guesses on what's best practices. And you just need to be flexible.
Crazy once you get to that level, like a little higher up to where you are now in the industry, like you realize all these people who you once looked at as like knowing it all, that they're just figuring it out still too.
And
they were just before
things are changing so often that you're constantly in a state of trying to nail down what's working.
Right. You never get to a point where it's like, I know it all and I can stop learning. Because the second you do that, like you're behind.
I talked about my favorite cookbooks of the year, and I bought a cookbook that's from this person who was like a biologist turned baker, going deep into the details of like the microbiology of sourdough.
I'm sure that's interesting.
And so what I said about the book I think it was Albert Einstein, and I'm paraphrasing, but the more I learn, the more I realize I don't understand. And I was like, every time I open this book, I realize I know absolutely nothing about sourdough.
Close the book.
And so, and it's same with social media. It's like, you finally feel like you get a handle on it and then something changes and you have to be flexible. And you see people who don't want to try and make it work. They want to keep doing what they've been doing the entire time and they fall off. And if you can't stay on top of it, like,
evolution.
It's like that example with that video that started taking off. You need to see an opportunity and jump on it. With that person who shared my stiff starter, I didn't want to talk about stiff starter because it's going to be hard for me to teach, but it was there. The opportunity was there and we had to jump on it and take advantage of it.
Yeah. Do what you got to do.
props to wifey for that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everything. Props to Camille on every single thing. Cause we wouldn't be here without her. I can get in the camera and explain things, but she's the one that's like, get in front of the camera. So
classic.
Yeah.
We're good. Well, keep it up, Camille.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here. If everyone made it this far, please like, subscribe, rate 5 stars, give them a follow, give us follow. All the
Go buy his bread drop, Shiloh in on the 18th.
Yep, Shiloh on the 18th. We do post about the weekly drops on Instagram and how you can sign up for pre-orders that way too. Okay. So you can get exactly what you want, how much you want. Yeah.
Cool.
Very
Great.
cool.
Well, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.